The wind howled like it carried secrets no man wanted to remember anymore that night. You ever feel like a place remembers pain longer than people ever could? Because this town did, and at its center stood a man who never smiled anymore. They called him a ghost, though he still walked, breathed, and worked every day. But something inside him had died long before anyone noticed the silence growing. I'm telling you, folks, this story begins with a coffin and a promise. A promise he failed to keep, and the guilt that followed him everywhere. And just when everyone thought his heart was buried for good, a clumsy stranger arrived, tripping over fate like she didn't belong anywhere. And somehow, that was exactly what this broken cowboy needed all along. You see, he used to laugh once, years ago, louder than anyone in town. Back when the ranch was full of life and love echoed through wooden walls. His wife, the only woman who ever softened his hardened cowboy soul completely. She had a way of turning even the hardest days into something worth smiling about. But life out here doesn't make promises it plans to keep for long. One winter night, cold and merciless, took her away without warning or mercy. Since then, the man you see now became something quieter, colder, almost unreachable. He worked, he ate, he slept, but he never truly lived again. Tell me honestly, have you ever seen someone alive but already gone inside? That was him, a shadow riding through days that no longer mattered anymore. The townsfolk tried at first, bringing food, kind words, awkward conversations and concern. But grief doesn't listen to kindness when it settles deep inside someone's bones. Eventually, they stopped trying, leaving him alone with his memories and silence. And maybe that's where the story should have ended, but fate had other plans. Because one dusty afternoon, a carriage rolled into town carrying unexpected chaos. Inside it sat a woman who clearly didn't belong in a place like this. Her dress was too bright, her posture unsure, her hands constantly fumbling everything. She stepped down, tripped immediately, and nearly knocked herself unconscious on arrival. Now I don't know about you, but that's not exactly a graceful entrance. But sometimes, the messiest arrivals bring the biggest changes into someone's life. She was a mail-order bride, sent across miles to marry a stranger. And guess who that stranger happened to be? The man who forgot how to smile. Yeah, I know, it sounds like trouble already, doesn't it, my friend? He didn't ask for her, didn't expect her, and certainly didn't want company anymore. But paperwork had been signed long ago, back when hope still lived inside him. And now she stood there, dusty, nervous, and completely unaware of his broken world. When they first locked eyes, you could feel the tension thick in the air. She smiled awkwardly, he didn't respond, just stared like she was a mistake. Tell me, would you stay if the man meant to welcome you looked that empty? Well, she did, and that's where everything slowly began to change. The first days were rough, and I mean painfully uncomfortable for both of them. She tried talking, filling silence with stories, questions, and clumsy, cheerful energy. He answered with nods, grunts, or sometimes nothing at all for hours. But she didn't give up, not even when she burned dinner 3 nights straight. Or when she dropped a bucket and startled the horses into a chaotic frenzy. You could say she was a walking disaster, but there was something genuine about her. She laughed at herself, brushed off mistakes, and kept trying no matter what happened. And slowly, that persistence began to crack something buried deep within him. Not enough to show, not yet, but enough to shift the air between them. Like a frozen lake beginning to thaw under the warmth of unexpected sunlight. One morning, she attempted to milk a cow and ended up chased instead. Running across the yard, screaming, slipping, and knocking over everything in her path. Now listen, this man hadn't laughed in years, not even a small chuckle. But something about the absurd chaos unfolding right in front of him. The way she tripped, stood up, waved at the cow like apologizing sincerely. It broke through, just a little, a sound he almost didn't recognize anymore. A laugh, short, rough, like it had forgotten how to exist properly. He covered his mouth immediately, like it wasn't allowed to escape again. But she heard it, turned, eyes wide, and smiled like she found treasure. And in that moment, something fragile yet powerful shifted between them forever. From then on, things didn't magically become perfect, not even close actually. But they became real, filled with awkward moments, small talks, and shared silences. She started learning the ranch, slowly improving, still clumsy but determined every single day. He started talking more, answering fully, even asking questions once in a while. And every now and then, she'd do something ridiculous that pulled another laugh. You see, healing doesn't come all at once, it comes in moments like these. Little cracks where light sneaks in, reminding you life hasn't ended completely yet. And for him, she became that light, not replacing what he lost, but showing him that loss doesn't have to mean the end of everything. Tell me, isn't that something we all need to be reminded of sometimes? One evening, under a sky painted with fading orange and quiet blue, she asked him about his past, gently, carefully, like stepping on fragile ground. For the first time, he didn't walk away or shut the conversation down. He told her about his wife, the love, the laughter, the unbearable loss. His voice broke, hands trembling slightly, eyes distant yet painfully present. And she didn't interrupt, didn't try to fix anything or offer empty comfort. She just listened, really listened, like his pain mattered enough to be heard. When he finished, silence filled the space, but it felt different this time. Not heavy, not suffocating, but shared, understood, somehow lighter than before. And maybe that was the moment he realized he wasn't alone anymore. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became something softer and warmer. The ranch felt alive again, not the same, but alive in a new way. She brought laughter, chaos, warmth, and a strange kind of comfort. He brought stability, quiet strength, and a heart slowly learning to beat again. Together, they created something unexpected, something neither of them planned for. And maybe that's what makes stories like this worth telling again and again. Because sometimes, the right person doesn't arrive perfectly, they stumble into your life. And somehow, through all the mess and mistakes, they help you breathe again. They remind you that pain doesn't define your entire story forever. And that even the quietest hearts can learn to laugh once more. One cold morning, he found himself smiling before he even realized it. Not because something funny happened, but because she was simply there. Arguing with a chicken, of all things, completely serious about her point. He watched from a distance, shaking his head, but this time softly amused. It wasn't forced, it wasn't painful, it just felt natural and easy. And that scared him a little, because it meant he was changing again. But maybe change isn't something to fear when it brings you back to life. Maybe it's something to welcome, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Tell me, have you ever been afraid of feeling okay after so long? Because sometimes, healing feels just as strange as the pain once did. Eventually, the town noticed, whispers spreading faster than wildfire across dry land. The man who never smiled was laughing again, talking, even helping others occasionally. And beside him stood the clumsy bride who changed everything without even trying. People wondered how, asked questions, but the truth was simple and complicated. She didn't fix him, she didn't replace his past or erase his grief. She simply stayed, consistently, kindly, stubbornly refusing to give up on him. And sometimes, that's all someone really needs to find their way back. Not solutions, not answers, just someone who refuses to walk away. Someone who sees the broken pieces and chooses to stay anyway. And that kind of presence can change even the hardest hearts over time. One night, sitting on the porch, he finally thanked her quietly. Not with grand words, but with honesty that carried more weight than anything. He told her she brought something back he thought was gone forever. She laughed it off at first, making a joke about her terrible cooking skills. But then she looked at him, really looked, and understood what he meant. There was no need for long speeches or dramatic declarations between them. Just a quiet understanding that something real had grown from unlikely beginnings. And maybe that's what love looks like sometimes, simple, quiet, and deeply meaningful. Not replacing the past, but building something new beside it gently. Something strong enough to carry both joy and pain together forward. So if you're listening to this and carrying something heavy inside your chest, if you feel like laughter has left you and won't ever return again, remember this story. Remember that even the coldest silence can be broken. Sometimes it takes time, sometimes it takes someone unexpected entering your life. And sometimes, it takes a little chaos to remind you how to feel again. Healing isn't perfect, it isn't quick, but it is possible, always possible. Even for the man who hadn't smiled in years until that day, when a clumsy stranger tripped into his life and refused to leave. And in doing so, gave him something he thought was lost forever. A reason to laugh, to live, and to feel something real again. And if this story touched your heart even a little bit today, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this. Drop a like if you believe even broken hearts can find happiness again. And tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone who changed everything? Because your story might be the one someone else needs to hear next.